How's it going, everybody? We are doing Garden Groove Podcast episode 9 this week, and we've got Brad Tuller coming on. He is a mastering engineer and does some mixing as well, and he kind of walks us through the process, teaches us a thing or two about what mastering is, and he actually does mastering for Taylor. So that's where we met him, got him in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I met him through Connor Gellert, is what I'm saying. Connor does guitar for me with my solo project stuff, the TJF stuff, and Connor led me to Brad. And Brad's, he's a wizard.
Yeah,
he's got a quick turnaround with his mastering stuff, and man's got good ears.
Yes.
Man can hear what many can't.
We learned a lot on this episode, so we really hope that there is stuff in here that you can take with you and bring into your own projects. Between the podcast and the recording of this, I have already used things that I learned from him on that podcast. So without further ado, here's Brad Tuller. Garden Groove Podcast, episode 8.
9.
Dang.
Should I say 10 to make it
10,
even? Or
Yeah. We already messed it up on one of the other episodes. We were saying 8 the whole time, and it was 7.
Golly.
Well, now it is episode 9.
That's because of the leap year.
Yeah, it's the leap
That's
year.
a great
This is
point.
the leap
One
cast.
gets added to everything this time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's
So we got Brad Tuller here, mastering extraordinaire.
Yes, sir.
We're going to
praises.
walk through some masters.
Yeah. Brad does all my mastering for my TJF stuff, in which I'm about to send you something in 2 days, which I'm very excited for.
I'm going to prepare the studio. It's always crazy when your stuff comes in.
Yeah,
The feng shui
more
the
to
studio.
fix than you.
Everything has to be facing north before I get your stuff. Just like what
Yeah.
you said. Yeah. It has to be exact.
You got to feng shui it.
But I met you through Connor Gellert, right? It's not Gellert.
If that's the case, then I am so sorry, Connor, because I've been saying your name wrong the whole time then.
What were you saying?
Gellert.
Gellert?
I don't know.
So I was saying Gellert for like 3 years. We don't have to go too into this. For like 3 years, and then I had him do some like content for Garden Groove, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, just like introduce yourself, and then introduce like what you're gonna talk about." He's like, "All right." And then the camera started rolling, and he was like, "Hello everybody, my name is Connor Gellert." And I was like, "What do you mean?"
I owe him.
So it's Gellert.
I think I owe him an apology, an explanation, and probably a gift after calling his last name wrong for the past 3 years.
Some chocolates.
I'll keep that in mind.
Well, we're going to have him on pretty soon, so
I think
we're all going to get an earful. We'll get it talking to.
Yeah. But yeah, so he introduced me to you, and then ever since, you were so easy to get in contact with and become friends with, which I think is really cool. And
No, same to you, dude.
that's
I mean,
not always easy to find. It's not hard to find, but in Nashville, I think there's a lot of
People are very
that-
nice here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my point.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're very easy to get in contact with, and you're very willing to help teach me. And
Dude,
yeah,
always. I feel like
I appreciate all that.
I love teaching people new things, and I love explaining things just
Yeah.
because it's like it helps me learn.
Yeah.
But there's nothing more satisfying than seeing something click inside someone's head, and then it's
100%.
theirs
Yep.
forever to keep and teach somebody
right.
else. That
Yeah.
feeling is like,
That's cool.
And it's so cool. Like you approach the same thing from like 14 different angles.
yeah.
And then angle number 14 worked, but all the other ones didn't work. And then you see it click.
Yeah.
It's like such a cool thing. Yeah. It's very cool. But yeah, that's how we met. And yeah, you're mastering and mixing engineer here. in
Mostly
Nashville.
mastering right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did mixing for a while. When I got to Nashville, met a lot of people here. Got a few mixing jobs, and then slowly I kind of just found myself kind of leaning towards mastering. I just enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to, because that's not the trajectory I thought I was going to take when I got here. I wanted to be like a producer for a lot of people, and when I got here 5 years ago, I was pretty naive about it. I was like, oh, I'm going to touch down. I'm going to be making money with like these other artists. It's going to be fine. And then 2 days later, my friend was like, yo, do you want to work at this coffee shop with me? And I was like, all right. I mean, it's probably the best, probably the best thing I could do.
Yep.
So I ended up working at the coffee shop. That's how I met everybody, actually. Even like
Isn't that so cool? Yeah.
if you trace back how we know each other, I could probably trace it back to 1 or 2 people I met at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
that led me to meeting you, and it's just insane. Like that was like the hub.
All roads lead to the coffee shop.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah. That's
really
actually
cool.
that's exactly what it's like here for sure.
Yeah, that was Harding House for me, as I met so many people through it, which they actually just closed yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Rip.
It was such a good place. But yeah, same thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have so many people coming in all the time that like you're just bound to meet people, and you're bound to meet musicians because it's Nashville.
Yeah.
So it's such a cool thing to take a side job like that.
I love that saying here. That's like you can throw a rock and hit a guitar player.
Yeah.
It's so true.
That's how I found Connor.
Yeah, it's you threw. How big was the rock?
Yeah. He's a block away from me.
That's
right?
so you literally could throw a rock in there. That's
I could've.
hilarious. Yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the Nashville is unique, and I learned this very, very quickly in the sense that I do not know if there is any other place in the world where you could walk down the street and assume that everybody's a musician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to constantly remind myself of that because I'm from New York originally. I grew up in a very in a very artistic school, like essentially like my entire schooling was through the arts and support of the arts and all that stuff. So I kind of had that before college. And then like when you go to college, you realize, oh no, not everybody is into the arts like this. Like you kind of have to find them. And then I came to Nashville and I felt like I was back in high school with like everybody around me
100%.
is into the same thing again. It's just wild.
Yeah, it is crazy when you find yourself in a room full of people and everyone's nerding out about compressors and you're like, where?
Yeah.
I'm at like the nerd convention for the thing I'm nerdy about, which there are not many of us in the rest of the world, percentage wise.
It is really true.
Most music nerds per capita in the U.S.
Yeah, for
Nashville.
sure.
Make that the state slogan, honestly.
Yeah, right. It's all about the per capita numbers. You know? Anywhere else, you're like you're in the 0.0% of people, and you find someone else that knows anything about it, and you're like, oh my god, and you got to talk to them about it.
Yep.
And here it just becomes like normal to everybody just knows all the same kind of stuff that you know about and is interested in it.
There's a
so
guy.
unique.
There's Mike Johnston. I've dropped his name probably to both you guys. But he's this like super successful drum teacher online. He was like one of the first to YouTube, and he started a podcast with this other guy, Eddie Thrower from London. And I think like when they started out the podcast, they were just like, yeah, we just needed like to talk to someone about drums because no one in my area talks about drums. So I had to go to London.
I was tired of talking
find
to
an
myself
expert.
about it.
Yeah,
It's like Drummers Anonymous. You meet every week.
totally.
That's so
yeah.
funny, yeah. So when you first got here and you were looking at, looking into production stuff and then kind of finding yourself doing mixing and then now mostly mastering, how did that progression sort of come to fruition? How did you find yourself in this position?
Yeah, so I think honestly what really happened was, again, the people that I met through the first job that I had here, I noticed that there was more of a need for them, not for production, some recording. I did some recording, but mostly it was they had somebody who was doing the mixing and they needed a mastering engineer. Or they were doing the mixing themselves, and they preferred it that way, which we all do that because that's, I mean, if you know what you like, go for it.
Yeah.
But I noticed that these people needed more perspective.
A different set of
Yeah,
ears.
and that's kind of what made me go, I could reach out to these people and really help them because I had the ear. I have this thing that I like to say that it's kind of funny to me, but it's like my wallet can't catch up to my ears, where it's like there's so much that I wish I could have to help with the mastering and to help other people.
Yeah.
And every mastering engineer has it where it's like, oh, these are great speakers, but look at the top shelf ones. Yes, they're $300,000, but one day.
Yeah.
But at the time when I was younger, I was really just going for it. And I just asked people if they needed somebody to help with their stuff. I got some work that way. And then as it goes, it slowly progressed. Things got upgraded on my end. I learned a lot and learned from so many people about the craft along the way too. I have some people that taught me things that would have taken me 5 years to learn on my own, and they taught it to me in about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So things like that were so valuable to me.
Yep.
But yeah, to answer your question, it really was just a slow progression of like, oh, you guys don't need this. You need that.
Yeah, see the need.
Yeah. And then I kind of just, but it made more sense to me the more that I and kind of enveloped my life with it.
Yeah.
Just thinking about what it is to master and what it means to be a mastering engineer. And yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the people that I've talked to that do mastering have never set out to be a mastering engineer necessarily, but they just sort of found themselves.
There was a need for it.
There was a need for
Yeah,
it.
because nobody knows what it is.
Well, yeah, it's so enigmatic.
I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was saying, like, before we started this, I was saying that I don't bill myself as a mastering engineer, but I've done some mastering for people, and it was the same thing. It was like they mix their own stuff. They don't really need a person to mix it, but maybe they knew me from my band playing with their band, and they wanted my input on it, like my take on it. So that was the way that they did it, was by getting me to master it for them and like getting that second set of ears.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's interesting to hear you say like that's sort of the same thing, and for how that went for you. Yeah.
Can you explain what mastering is for people that don't know this kind of stuff? Because when I moved to Nashville, I met with Josh Bonanno, who
I met with him.
We both know. And I was like, yeah, I just want to learn about mixing. He's like, okay, what is mixing? I was like, oh. And I was talking about, I defined producing pretty well when I had tried to define mixing.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, okay. So like you just don't know the different steps in the process.
Yeah, how
the
different
song
they are
traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
Can you define mastering? Like what that step is?
So I would say that mastering it truly is perspective. It's also peace of mind.
Yeah.
If we're talking like bird's eye view of like what it is for, because people get stuck hearing what they want to hear, and sometimes you need somebody to come in and say, well, that's fine, but it could also sound like this.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So mastering in its simplest form is really just the final QA.
Right.
And there's a lot that goes into that. We're talking about a tree with a lot of roots right now.
Yeah.
But it is the final QA of tonally, how will it translate?
Mm-hmm.
Do the files make sense naming wise and track listing wise? Are there any errors? Do things need to be fixed that I'm hearing that you may not have heard?
You're good with that.
Yeah,
for me,
there's a lot
sure.
of there's a lot of stuff like that is like tiny little things that stack up, but you need to be able to hear it within a certain amount of time depending on how busy your schedule is. But I try to work within the constraint of an hour.
Yeah.
So like that's why I'm saying that. Like I really try to do my best to get everything that I need to hear and fix within an hour, or else it will never get done, and it will not be as good as it could be.
Yep.
There's a great quote from Deadmau5 I heard a long time ago. I think I may have told you about this. It is like my favorite thing I've ever heard a musician say. He said something to the effect of, when I feel like a project is at 90%, I stop. Because if I reach 100%, that's when it's never going to be good enough. Right. Because I'm going to keep trying to find things to fix.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I approach mastering within that. It's like, does anything need to be fixed?
Right.
If so, or not even fixed, changed is really what I should be saying. And how do I approach that?
Right. You got a good ear for it too. Because
thank you.
Every time I bring your name up to someone, I bring up the first time I went to your studio, and I was like, yeah, can you just like listen to the mix of this like silly little song that I made in Ableton? And you're like, do you hear that? Like, do you hear that frequency? I'm like, what? Like, no, not at all. And like you played it on loop. You played like a 2-count thing on loop. It's like, do you hear that? I don't hear shit. You soloed in on the frequency. I'm like, do you hear that? Like, no, it's not there. And then we went into my session, and then we brought up the track with it. And my my interface at the time was like giving this crackly sound every now and then. And it was this little crackle sound that I couldn't hear. is like
Little tiny things.
but
Yeah.
when
They
you
stack
meet
up.
someone that has, you both have this, but like when you meet someone that has that kind of ear and you
Yeah.
can pick apart certain frequencies and
Mm-hmm.
all this kind of stuff. Like I don't have that. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Well,
to see.
the reason why I think I'm able to do things like that, to hear those nuances, is I mean 13 years of my life was playing trombone. So
Yeah, right.
I played an instrument that had no frets, no keys, no guidance, and you have
Yeah.
to use your ears entirely to make sure in that second
Yeah,
you are
that's
on
right.
pitch.
Wow.
Not to
yeah.
mention all the tuning that has to go in with the valves and all like the
Yeah.
tuning valves on top of stuff. There's
Right.
so many nuances that go into tuning with trombone, between temperature, embouchure,
Sure.
slide position. Like there's so much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when I discovered production, then mixing, mastering, and all the way down the chain, mastering made the most sense to me, because all of a sudden it was, oh, this is just the microscope that my mind went under when I played trombone, but it's
Yep.
frequencies and not notes within
Right.
the
Wow.
440
It's the
tuning.
micro
It's-
details. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I feel like it just it makes sense to me
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
regard.
So mastering's really honing in on the micro details and then making sure everything is suitable for the platform that it's going to be pushed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it's both micro and macro. It's my job
Yeah.
to notice things that people don't, to make sure that they don't have to think about them.
Yeah.
That weight goes on my shoulders. And I say it a lot too. Like, my favorite thing about mastering is the responsibility. Like being able to have people turn to me and like trust me with their work and like work through issues together and communicate like that.
Yep.
That's what makes me
I like
that's what
that.
makes me going. I love that
I
stuff.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the most common questions asked, because we start with what is mastering. I think the next
What
question
is?
everybody asks is, how do I get my song to be loud?
Oh my
Oh.
yeah.
How do I get it loud enough without it being this bricked out mess or this squashed, over compressed
Yep.
thing that has no dynamic range?
Yeah.
You just get
you
the
know-
Oxford inflator.
I was
Put it
gonna
on your
say,
master
I was gonna
device and
say,
you're
there's
set.
this thing called the volume knob, and
Crank that thing.
I'm going to
No.
turn the thing up.
yeah, I think
You can keep going though.
okay, yeah. So like, it depends. I think it depends on the genre, honestly, because like a lot of the time, heavier tracks will need some sort of energy that can only be achieved with some of those elements of
Sure,
like heavy
yeah.
limiting and stuff like that. But when it comes to loudness, you have to ask first if that's a goal or if that's necessary or a part of what you're trying to get. Because if it's not, then usually what you can do without having to like push it to the extremes, getting it louder, is frequency response, mid-range. I mean, it's perception. Human ears,
Right.
we hear
Right.
most sensitive from 1 to 3K. Fletcher Munson curves, you can look it up.
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
were
even
talking
gonna go
about
into
this
that. Yeah.
at the pub. Yeah.
So yeah, like frequency response and making sure that mid-range is really popping.
Yeah.
And also, you'd be surprised at like imaging. High frequency imaging can make things way louder.
Really?
Perceived loudness. Yeah, like if you widen it, you have to be very careful. But if you widen the high frequencies and you just kind of push them outward a little bit, it takes up more of the spectrum, and your ears are like, whoa, this sounds huge. But it's really
Oh,
like a
that's
perceived thing. It's not really like a levels thing as much. It's really
Right.
perception.
But
But
it's
it's
so much of what
yeah.
loudness is the perception of it.
Yeah.
It's not the physical loudness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Always.
the space. Yeah,
Yeah.
that it's taking up.
A great example of that in the real world is actually on like stereo receivers, the loud button. What that does is when we hear lower frequencies, it's harder for us to hear lower frequencies at lower volumes. So the loud button is just a EQ boost that
Yeah.
when you turn down the volume, you can pop that in, and all of a sudden it's supposed to balance out the low end and like make sure that you're hearing everything as you would at a normal volume.
Yeah.
So that's what that loud button is on like stereo receivers from like the 60s and the 70s and
Oh,
stuff.
interesting.
Yeah, I think some of them
That's
still
cool.
have it, but now they have like digital. The one that I have has like digital EQ for treble and bass. So
I've got one from the 80s that has like, I don't know if it has the loud button on it, but it's got some wild.
it's called different things
controls
sometimes.
on it.
Yeah. It's like sometimes it's called boost. The one that I see a lot is loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that you were the first person to tell me this, and then I've seen Chad Blake. Chad Blake? Is that the
Yeah, that's how it's
the
said.
mixing guy?
Yeah, there's just a T. in
T.
there.
Chad.
To
Blake?
Chad.
Yeah.
I thought it was T Chad.
That's
when I was
Chad,
so
like,
cool.
when
though.
I was a kid, I thought it was T Chad. I'd see it like on songs like T Chad Blake. I'm like,
It's like
who's
a
that
Key and
guy?
Peele
Who's
name.
T Chad? Yeah,
The sport
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
T. Chad Blake.
T Chad Blake.
But he talks about, and you talked about, like if you boost, like if you have a kick drum, and you boost, let's say you boost the sub frequency, like you don't necessarily hear that. You feel it more, but because you're feeling it more, you hear the 8K kind of come through a little bit more too, because the whole thing is coming through. That makes sense? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You've talked
Well,
about that.
I know that there is, when you boost a certain frequency, there are also nodes up the octave spectrum from
Yeah.
that frequency when you
Right.
boost it. So, yeah, so like if you boost at 50, you could get a node at 500 and 5K, and then
Right.
maybe you want to cut the 500 because it's muddy, and the 5K just gives you a little bit more. Like
Right.
with a kick drum, you know, it's
Right.
like you can lean into that a little bit,
Right.
Mhm.
So when you boost, one frequency, it's helping you hear the whole.
or hurting you, and you got
Or
to
hurting
cut.
you. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
when you brought it up, though.
Yeah.
Boosting a certain frequency on something. And you're like, well, if you boost here, you should probably cut here for that reason.
Well, yeah. So there's, I think what you're talking about too. A lot of that comes from, that's what saturation helps with, is like harmonic structure and more presence that way, because
Yeah.
that inherently just creates more presence and more tonality up the spectrum as you go.
Right.
But yeah, with what you're talking about, I think what you're mentioning is what I said about mirroring with frequencies,
That might be
where
right.
it's like
Yeah.
it's the concept where like if you boost the mid range, it also might sound like you're scooping the low mids because they're mirrors of each other.
Right.
So if you boost the low mids, all of a sudden the high mids or the mids go down. So it's just a way to think about different ways of approaching the same problem. Where it's, if there's too many low mids, do I preserve that and just boost the mid range to compensate,
Right.
or do I actually lower the low mids
yeah.
and then now you have this? So that's where a lot of like, I think Bob Katz talks about it in his book, in his mastering book.
Bob Cass.
Yeah, that's the Bible.
Is it?
That's the mastering Bible for sure.
You're going to have to send me that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll send you the
What's
link.
his book called?
I legitimately think it's just called Mastering Audio, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've looked
Sounds
at
like
it.
a good place
Yeah.
to start.
Yeah.
You know?
Look it up for me if you can. 'Cause I'm
Bob
curious.
Katz.
Just look up Bob Katz's mastering book. I can't remember the exact title. It's been a few years since I've opened it, but I return to it every so often.
I might have to pick that up.
Yeah. But it's cool because he goes into detail about the most recent edition. Oh, you got it?
No.
Oh.
There's a TV show. There's a TV show called Bob, and then there's a cast to that TV show.
Look up. It's a Katz.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, what's cool about that book is more editions have come out as audio has progressed. So in the one that I have was kind of around the time when LUFs were becoming huge and everyone was like,
Yeah.
oh, we gotta. So he
Everyone's
talks
paying
about it.
attention to LUFs, yeah.
And he talks about how to approach LUFs with streaming and a bunch of other things that were updated, which is
Yeah.
fascinating and useful.
And very,
Yeah.
like, kind of the standard right now is like, I mean, you're basically just mastering for Spotify and Apple Music.
Yep.
You know, 90% of what is being heard is going to be from those two.
Yeah.
And you want to play to their
Right.
settings, which actually brings me into another interesting question. Maybe maybe you know about this, or maybe you're just in the same boat where like everybody has their own they've staked out their position on it, which is the negative 14 LUFs for Spotify or whatever. You know, like I've heard some people say, I don't care. I'm going to make my master sound good, and then I'm going to just throw it at Spotify and they can do what they want to do with it. Other people are very purist about it, where they're like, it has to fall under this. You don't want your master to get messed with in the compression ratio of the streaming service or whatever. Where do you fall on that kind of debate?
I still fall into the realm of if it makes the song sound better, I'm just gonna do it. When it comes to like limiting and stuff, a lot of I've had a lot of discussions with some colleagues about this.
Yeah.
And we all kind of are just like, yeah, I mean, we're gonna limit and we're gonna put it in because Spotify. I mean, it's always changing. But the way that Spotify in particular,
they're not transparent about it either.
yeah, they're not, and it's so
Which isn't that
difficult.
bizarre that they're not showing that. Yeah,
You think they'd want to be like they would have a vested interest in being more transparent.
it literally helps everybody.
I looked up what the current process is a few months ago, and it probably has even changed since then.
Yeah.
But I will say, my philosophy about it is, usually, what they're going to do is they're going to turn it down, which is just gain.
Yeah.
And I would rather have them turn it down with gain than up with whatever limiting they used to put on there to compensate.
That's a good point.
So I would much rather whatever I do be maintained, and then they can just lower the gain, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it could have changed since then how they approach it. I think now that I'm recalling, there was something about how they approach I think they're measuring something about the difference in peak to LUFS or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly what it was. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna do what I think the song needs.
Yeah.
So
I
that's kind of where I
jive
stand.
more with that view of things. I feel like trying to, well, for one, like from mastering songs, there's some songs you just cannot make fit into that, because there's too much dynamic range in the song, or the energy of the song is just, you'd have to like deconstruct the mix almost to even get it into those parameters.
Right.
Well, okay, so we kind of talked about some philosophy stuff, and then we're going to go into some masters. Before we get into the masters, I'm super curious about what is your mastering sort of rig? Like, are you using a lot of plugins? Are you using some outboard gear? What kind of speakers?
Yeah. So I keep it really simple. Okay. I think I just recently bought my first new plugin in a long time, and it was the Oxford Inflator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were
because I was fascinated, but I always wanted it, and I just I never had a reason to get it until recently. I was like, I think that would sound great on this, so I bought it, and I was proven right very quickly with how good that sounds.
You opened my mind when it came to the curve, because you have two inputs. You have the effect. Well, no, you have your input, and then you have the effect, and then you have the curve.
Yeah.
And I just knew it made it louder. But then you were like, yeah, don't put the curve above like 15%.
Oh, well,
because that brings up the high end. And I was like, oh yeah.
So yeah, that the 15% thing was the effect, because that's basically the mix.
Backwards?
Maybe, but it's okay. We can go back and we can listen.
I got to change my mixes now.
But here's the thing. If it sounds good, leave it.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like, it doesn't matter. Honestly, a lot of the times the mistakes you make are the best things for a project, because you wouldn't have done them otherwise.
Right.
That happens all the time. But yeah, so the thing with the effect is quickly. It's just it's like the mix knob. So it's like how much of the effect are you giving it? It's like parallel, I think, essentially. Right. And then the curve is just what parts of the spectrum. So in positive percentages, you're going to influence the high end and the mid range more, and at lower percentages, it's more transparent and it's at a lower. Yeah, but it's funny. I did a sine wave test on my rig, and when you approach minus 17 on the curve, the second harmonic just disappears. And the second you go to 17.1, junk, it's like back up a little bit. But it makes sense for like what they're saying it affects, because it's literally just shifting the response curve, literally. Right. That's why it's called the curve.
Right.
But yeah, that's I could go for hours about that stuff. I love it.
You're so good. I love it.
All right, so my rig.
Yeah, sorry.
Technically, we did answer that question a little bit, because I do use the Oxford Inflator.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. So, mostly almost all in the box, except for, I'm going to switch it out soon, I think. But I, for a while, have been using the Loop Trotter Saturate 2 hardware.
Okay.
Not the software. It's kind of a crazy thing to choose to use, because it's not detented. I could mod it to get it detented if I wanted, but I set rules for myself, and I'm like, positions 1 through 10, I'm choosing a position so that I can recall it easily. Yeah. Because you can go to the nth between everything, because it's variable. So I just like it's just a saturator. That's the only piece of hardware that I have that adds so much amazing low end, but it also does this crazy thing where it has a high smooth that I think it boosts the high end and mid range and high mids by like 10 dB into the saturator, and then it attenuates it on the output. So it does like this crazy cool shimmering effect. But you have to know what it's doing, because if you don't know, it's going to mess up your masters. Like, it adds so much low mids because of where the low, where the shelf is.
Is that the first thing you're hitting?
No, so that's.
Or is that
I kind of just went on a tangent, but yeah.
No, you're fine. That's super interesting.
That's in the middle. That's after. No, you're good, dude. It's
I'm all over the place. I'm like, whoa, dude. Let me get a piece of paper. I gotta write this down.
So
what is it called again?
It's the Loop Trotter Saturate.
Loop Trotter Saturate. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go back
it's
and watch
actually
the video
spelled-
to make sure I caught that.
Dude, yeah. They have a software version that's pretty cool too. But it's spelled SA2.
Okay.
URAT.
Saturator.
Yeah. I think that the U is in there, yeah.
Saturator.
Saturator. But yeah, so that's in the middle of my chain. But I'll go through it. So
Yeah.
usually it's the Bax EQ for general shaping, then Pro Q. Then I go into Shadow Hills most of the time, because I kind of like making decisions on the transformer, because you can do the 60 hertz boost, 250, or the high shelf. Then it goes into saturator.
Okay.
Whether it's Oxford or the saturate. Then another round of EQ if I need, because sometimes I want to push things harder in saturation to get an effect, but at the cost of something else.
Right.
So I might have to go back. Then any imaging if I need, clipping, limiting, and that's and at the end it's a Clarity M plugin that just sends to my Clarity M monitor thing in front of me.
Oh yeah, your monitor controller.
That just lets me see, like, I love that thing, dude. It just saves screen space, because I don't have a second monitor.
Yeah.
So I just I don't need to pull up plugins to see very basic things. I just go like that, back up,
it's got,
and that's it. It's like right in front of me.
It's got levels for like LUFs and all that. So you're basically able to monitor.
It's so useful.
Yeah, that's really nice. Oh wait, that thing's got a spectrum analyzer too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
That's
it's
cool.
the spectrum, it's loudness over time, which is cool. It has the dial.
Yeah.
So it lets you literally see how dynamic your song is over time.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I think it's the Gonia meter. Is that how you pronounce it? The crazy phase one that spreads out over time.
Yeah,
that thing's actually
I don't know
really
what it's
useful.
called, but I
the
know what you're
strings.
talking about.
That is most useful when I
Those are
get
cool.
mixes and I need to make sure if there are phase issues that I think I'm hearing.
Yeah.
A lot of the time I'll throw it in there, and if I'll look at the correlation and that thing, it'll let me know exactly if there's something that needs to be adjusted.
Right.
Can we explain what a LUF is? I don't know what that is.
A LUF.
Yeah,
A
that's
single LUF. Yeah, so it's loudness units full scale. So it's you can chip in, you can chime in on this if you want to correct me on some of this, but it's like so it's a measurement of loudness, but it more so tailors to what we hear and perception of hearing.
Sure.
So
like certain-
it utilizes that curve more than something like RMS, which is bass heavy. If you have a lot of bass, RMS will shoot through the roof.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just it's like it's another measurement system like the K measurement system is, and like all that other stuff. It's just
Interesting.
different.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know much about. I can't really chime in too much.
So
'cause
it's just
like
it's measuring like
it's-
volume, but it's also volume is dependent on what frequencies.
yeah.
So it's measuring
I don't know how
it's
to
measuring
finish that
loudness.
sentence. Yeah,
It's
I
kind
got
of
you.
I guess to create an analogy, if you think about the difference between white noise and pink noise, white noise, and correct me if I'm wrong here, white noise is every frequency at the same volume, and pink noise is every frequency at the same amplitude.
Oh.
So
I could be
it's power
wrong.
versus actual loudness. So if you were to listen to pink noise, you're hearing every frequency at the actual perceived loudness is all balanced between every single frequency. White noise, it's all the same loudness, but our ear, like you were saying earlier, 1 to 3K is what you're hearing the most of. So you're going to hear it. Your ear's going to pick it up with the built-in EQ bias that we have in our
So-
ears. So a different way of adjusting or measuring loudness would sort of work the same way in how it's reacting to the different frequency. I'm looking to Brad to
yeah. So
Wow.
I actually think
I think I'm right.
we should look this up because when
Yeah.
I used to know this like the back of my hand when I was heavy into synthesis.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. But white noise I think is every frequency at random levels.
Oh, random.
And I think pink noise is equal level per octave.
Okay.
So that's why pink noise actually kind of has a little tone
Yeah.
because there is designation between the levels of each octave of frequency.
Yeah.
But we could look it up and be sure.
Yeah.
Because it's been a
Golly.
while.
We might have to throw a big disclaimer over everything. I'll throw in a tentative disclaimer.
Yeah.
We could have been wrong for the last 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So don't
You
go
could
in
even-
on us in the comments.
You could do an edit too, where it's like if this is too long, you can do like skip to this time, or you could just fast forward us
right.
and hear the chipmunk noises for 10 seconds.
Hey guys, Jackson and Taylor behind the
5 times.
scenes here. We were wrong for like 3.5 minutes, so just disregard all that.
I'll
We
have
were
to.
just spitballing.
Now I have to go home and brush up on my my noise styles.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
yeah, because there's brown noise.
I was about
too.
to say, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I
that's
wasn't
just
even
filtered white noise.
Is really.
I think so. Maybe we're not gonna get into it. we'll go
There's
on.
one
Golly.
that's like supposed to be better to sleep to than white noise because it's more soothing.
Yeah.
It's at
Something
the 445 hertz,
Yeah.
which is nature's
binaural beats, man.
Yeah, the
That's 440, I think. is
nature's
the-
frequency. What's 440?
All right, I'm trying to remember where we even.
I'm gonna.
just-
We were
I'm
on
just
his
gonna look
on
this
his
up.
signal flow. What we were on his on his
Yeah, we're
on
going-
his chain on his master
The chain, yeah.
not signal flow.
I'll look it up later. This is one of those things where like I'm not gonna sleep tonight.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be
gotta
like,
figure it out.
what is it? What is it?
The equation's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the math is so we've covered you said you start with the back CQ. That's a very popular mastering EQ. The Pro Q3, of course, I'm sure you're kind of being able to look at levels there in different frequency ranges to
And you can do
notch things out and
and then you can do like mid-side stuff with Pro EQ too,
yeah.
which is cool.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
That stuff is super helpful for you can enhance some stuff with it, but it's helpful to fix things that are a little like overwhelming a lot of the time.
Yeah, you were talking about like hi-hats.
Yeah, cymbals and stuff when
that
they get
10K.
crazy.
Yeah.
You can just shelf on the sides a little bit and really like get in there.
Yeah,
it's
that's
cool.
And then
That blew my mind.
Shadow Hills with all the knobs. And then
I tried explaining what they do to
You,
Taylor.
you
It's
explained it
hard.
You explained it well.
Yeah.
yeah,
You got to break it down into sections of 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
That's right.
I got to see one of those in person at Blackbird when I was
So
in
cool.
school, and we like sat there and studied it for a minute. And,
Yeah.
like, went through it and we was like, "Oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
is crazy." Have you ever been to their website?
The
Their
Shadow
we-
Hills website?
Yeah, it's so mysterious.
I think along.
It's
Is
like-
it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it feels like you're stumbling across like clues for some sort of mystery. Like it's hardly like
Is
a
it just a bad interface?
no,
Or-
no. It's
No,
like
it's just like
designed that way.
Their logo.
They
when
want you to be confused.
Yeah.
Shadow Hill.
Their
Yes.
logo is like
Yeah.
isn't it like super Victorian style
Yeah,
with
and
the
well-
2 birds? Or it's like 2 animals like on a
Yeah.
crest or something.
And the website, you like when you get there, it's like it. I don't know if they've changed it, but it looks like a neo noir like.
I think I remember that.
You know,
It's been
like a
while.
detective movie. Like it was 3 a.m. in New York City. You know, a murder had just happened. It looks like that is like setting the scene. Little tangent there, but
I just want to know how to download the plugin.
You literally have to search around the website to get to the products.
Gotta really want
Yeah,
it.
it's like
This can't
they're
be an
making
impulse
you
buy.
work for it.
Yeah, you can't just impulsively buy
We're
this.
giving
You
you
gotta search.
a taste of how much work you're gonna have to put in to learn the product
Yeah.
when you get it.
Totally, you gotta want it.
So then you go from there to your saturator, your Sat2rater,
or Oxford.
or Oxford. Okay, so
Recently Oxford, honestly.
Recently Oxford.
That's really been
so it's one or the
So cool.
other.
yeah.
yeah. And
So
then-
okay, but
go ahead.
sometimes if I'm really if something needs to pop
Yeah.
like metal stuff,
Oh yeah.
I'll go Oxford into the saturator.
I was
and
gonna
it's
say-
insane.
Yeah, you
It's
mentioned Oxford.
insane because you get a lot of high end from the inflator, and then that gets tamed a little bit with the saturator, and then all that low mid stuff gets added back in with it, and it's just like this. And then it's also kind of like a soft clipper if you push
Yeah.
it, so you get all this crazy amount of like saturation and distortion if done right.
Yeah.
Because you can get carried away.
Yeah.
And I've done it. But sometimes it needs that.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
So then when you come out of there, you said clipping and then limiting?
EQ if needed.
EQ if needed.
Because sometimes
Yeah.
things come out as a result of other processes.
Sure. So just correcting for any unwanted frequencies that are getting boosted.
Yeah.
And then
Imaging. And then clipping, limiting, or just any sort of like dynamics processing after that.
So that's interesting to me because you've got your compression stage, you've got your saturation stage. If you're going to do clipping, what are you getting from the clipping stage that you're not getting from your compression and saturation together?
Yeah, so I approach the compression stage a little not differently, but I use the compressor a lot in the longest attack, fastest release. So I really, this is interesting. I haven't really thought about this, but I kind of do view my process as like it's the first half of the chain before saturation is overall.
Right.
And then it's the minor things afterwards.
Okay.
After
interesting,
saturation. Because I want to enhance a lot of what I did initially for that broad spectrum stuff.
Yeah.
So what the clipping does, and it also sometimes I'm barely doing anything. It just depends on like what the
Really?
goal is. I just did a mastery the other day that the drums were so and the guy told me too. He was like, just letting you know, these drums are insane. And he was like, they wanted it louder multiple times. It was like a pretty unique situation.
Yeah.
So I sent it through the clipper and it got rid of the insane transient energy that just didn't need to be there most of the time.
Yeah.
I think I would rather enhance what's there first and then approach it in a more micro
And solve
scale
problems.
second way. Yeah. And that's what I actually haven't really thought about that before, but that is a lot of how I approach it. Because it's broad strokes and then more fine strokes afterwards. But
Right.
but yeah, and it depends. Like if it needs loudness and they want it louder, I have to make room.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna clip a little bit harder.
Right.
So I use the standard clip, SIR audio. There, if you read the manual, which we talk about a lot, the distortion settings are different and the sliders react differently.
Okay.
So in soft clip mode, it's a soft saturator essentially, but in hard clip mode, it's compression. So it raises levels into the clipper essentially is what you're doing. So those two processes can also affect how I'm approaching something with the clipping. So, yeah.
Interesting. Taylor, are you with us?
No. Well, no, I am. But like,
It's a lot of terminology.
I am with
dude.
you, but
Yeah.
it's like it's so different from the realm that I'm working in.
Yeah.
Like I'm just starting to learn about master buses and like what
Yeah.
all that means, or like how to do it.
Well, I'm learning
properly.
too, so
Yeah.
this isn't 100%. I'm not just like, oh yes, I'm
Yeah.
know all of this.
Of course.
I just quickly want to also talk about that. What I'm thinking about most when I'm mastering is not the tools in front of me. It's how I'm hearing everything because I need to make sure that what I'm hearing is what I want to be hearing and how I want to hear it. So, I have the Callies, the Cali Innates, which are perfect for my room and they're great, but I also know that room really well.
Yeah,
I
yes,
you
know
do.
that room
You
really,
know
really
how
well.
it's gonna sound.
Yeah, and
time.
the way that I compare everything is with I have the HD 660S, the Sennheisers, with SonarWorks to flatten the curve, and then I have, this is controversial, but I have the Cardis cables. They're whatever their base model is for headphones.
The ones with like
Oh,
the
you-
silver braiding. Yeah.
Yeah, I am not a tech guy per se, but what I do know is I used to think that it was a bunch of mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
And then I had an opportunity through somebody I knew to try the $400 model that they have on Cardis. So I tried them, and he loaned me them after because I said I couldn't believe how much of a difference they make,
Yeah.
and they do. So I got the base model,
Wow.
and because his model was old compared to what they were coming out with now, and from what I had heard, the base model caught up with his older model to an extent. They fixed some things and it made it a little bit better than what it used to be. So it was close to what the other cable set was, and I was just like, this is insane, dude.
Yeah.
I think we met that week when you got those headphones.
Yeah, I think
and
so
you're like,
too.
Dude, I gotta show
You have to. Yeah, I was like, you have to hear
Okay.
this. I've done blind tests too. I have a lot of friends that are non-believers, and I did a blind test with them. I sat them in a chair. I didn't tell them which cable set I was showing them, and I asked them which one they like better. Always the Cardis cables. And one of them, in fact, said, I hate that I can tell the difference between the two of them.
Yeah.
And he was the biggest non-believer.
Oh, yeah.
That was proof enough for me.
We had a whole segment about snake oil in at Blackbird.
Yeah.
Our last week, we had like a little crash course where we like, all right, we're going to teach you a little bit about mastering, a little bit about like marketing yourself. Like, I mean, they taught us a little bit of all that stuff throughout, but we had a few little crash courses, and one of them was just how to identify like some of this stuff. And it's interesting because because it was like, and of course, this is what we were looking at was outrageous. It was like, these are speaker monitor cables, and they're $30,000, and it's pure silver that was created in Mount Mordor, you know,
Blessed by a rabbi.
Blessed by a
Totally.
rabbi.
Frodo had to take the cables to Mount Doom.
Take them to Mount Doom. They were encased in frozen holy water while being transported. And
Really brings out the high end.
Yeah, man. Like, when you get that, you know, the holy water on it, you know, there's like something up in 98K that is just
Secret
your
Service
soul
escorts
feels
have to go in the truck with the products.
Yeah.
Totally.
A Brinks truck pulls up and they have to unlock it. But that's very interesting. I actually have listened on that exact setup that you're describing at the studio I interned at in Boulder. And he had the Grace setup, and he had a pair of the Barefoot Micro Mains, which were awesome. And then his
Those are cool.
headphone setup was the what was the headphones you were just saying?
I have the 660S.
Yeah, the 660s. And then he had one of, like, I don't know if that was the same model or whatever, but I do remember it being one of the most like hi-fi listening. Of course, I would be listening while we were tracking, you know, so there'd be like drums in the room and stuff.
Right.
So I never got like a full sit-down experience, but they did sound amazing. They were really good.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, like, of course you would believe that it's mumbo jumbo because no one's going to have a chance to try them. You can't demo them.
Yeah,
you can't demo $500 cables. Like, no one's going to do that. So that's why it's like you have to be in the right position to try them out, and then make a decision for yourself for good, whether it's you think it's great or not. But yeah, that setup is just so that I can hear everything flat, and I know, and the Callies are flat too.
Yeah, they're
so transparent.
Yeah, I was. I'm in the market. As soon as the tax return hits, I'm upgrading the speaker system. I'm very excited.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm adding a sub, and I'm gonna upgrade the speakers.
Nice.
It's a long time coming.
Yeah,
I'm working off some KRK rockets.
You're doing some great stuff on those speakers though.
I have learned those things
be
inside and out. I've had them for almost 10 years.
It's amazing how good
you know
can
them.
be.
I know
them.
I know them well, and I just moved to a new house, but I've learned my room like decently. I still am, ironing some things out, but that's why I ask. So that I know there's the I-8s and the LP8s.
I have the I-8s. I call them the N8s, but yeah,
or N8s.
I don't even know. I love them because they're three-way speakers, but they're coaxial, so the mid-range. Sorry, the tweeter sits inside of the mid-range cone. So it's a three-way speaker. It's just set up differently. Looks like a two-way speaker, but it's not.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's what makes them kind of special. And the imaging is insane because of it. But they're also front-ported, so the bass is ridiculous.
Are you using a sub with that as well?
No, I don't have room for one right now.
You don't have room for
I would love one. It just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
But that's again why I have the headphone setup. Is with the 660s and the flat response, I can hear everything. Yeah. And again, that room that I'm in is a little bass heavy, so I know that for what I'm going for, if the bass is a little bit louder than what I want it to be in that room, it's perfect.
Yeah,
because that's what the room does.
Right.
And it's just a feeling. I'm like, oh, the bass is there. That means it's good.
Right.
And in that room, because the room is a little bit darker than I'd like it to be, I use that as a tool where if things sound bright in that room,
it's way too bright.
That's way too bright.
Yeah.
And I know it immediately. I hear an S and I'm like,
Yeah.
It like pierces my skull. I'm like,
Yeah.
it must be fixed
Yeah.
immediately. Like it's so apparent when it's too bright.
Yeah, it's like if it was in headphones, it'd rip someone's eardrum in half.
Dude.
Yeah. That's a really good demonstration of like what it really means to learn your room too, and it's so
necessary.
important because you're never gonna have a perfect listening environment unless you are building it from the ground up, and even then, there's probably gonna be unforeseen challenges. That's a really good a good way to describe it.
I've moved around a lot in Nashville, and the first time I get into a new spot, first thing I do is a sine wave sweep in the room. I put the paneling up first, and then I do a sine wave sweep. And it's a really good thing to know where your room is failing you a little bit, but also how to. I approach things a lot as like things that seem wrong are often a tool that you can use as a way to get closer to what you want. So that's like an example of that, where if there's a frequency that's wrong or that's like too powerful, if you don't have the means to get rid of it, that's your cue to use it and to make sure that when you hear that popping out, you know where the balance is beneath it. Yeah. In a sense, it's like everything underneath that. So, yeah.
Me and 180 hertz are beefing right now in my new room. Yeah. 180 is violent in that room.
I love to imagine you in your room, and then there's like one bass tone pops out, and you're just like,
it's just like, boom,
looking up, and you're like squaring up,
dude, that's
ready.
totally how it works. That's again when I went to your studio for the first time, like. I didn't know what I was doing back then, and there was like a bass note that just like shook the room for a
almost
second.
Like it runs away. As soon as it catches on, it's like the room like winds up. And you're like, whoa.
The whole room is resonating with it.
The whole room starts resonating.
And that's also why it's called a home studio. Yeah. Because you have to. I heard this somewhere, but like you have to make do with what you can and with what you're provided. And obviously, like the market right now for buying a house, a little crazy.
It's not good right now.
So you just have to. You have to make do with what you have, but there's always a way to turn it to an advantage for yourself.
That's right.
If you look at it the right way. Yeah.
I think it's very true.
Yeah, and you can learn to know those spots, and then the only bummer is just when you're playing it back and you're like, okay, I'm hearing too much of that, but that's okay because it's hyped up in the room.
Right. Right.
And that again, that's why I have the headphones set up too. Yeah, because like to be extra sure.
Yeah,
just have that flat setup and just make sure that it checks out both ways.
Yeah.
I like that.
Shall we?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to move? I'm gonna check these cameras.
Okay.
Because some of them were starting to die. So can you give me like 5 to start charging these?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. You know what I'm gonna turn the volume.
No, it was good. It sounded great.
when you don't want your guest to feel bad. No, it's fine. It sounded great. It sounded great, dude.
It did.
It's so funny. All right.
I'm ready.
Are we going?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going.
So I have a fun thing first.
Ooh.
I always come with something. I always show up with something fun. Okay.
All right.
That's right. Ready.
Always.
I expect nothing less of you.
I mean, we did throw the boomerangs at Shelby Park.
That's a good point.
So I'll take you next time. It's so fun, dude. You think they don't work, and then when they do, you're like,
your mind's blown. I've never understood how boomerangs actually do work, but I'm ready to be proven wrong.
It's very fun.
I'm open.
You know what? Just like the headphone cables, you think it's snake oil, and then the second you see it work, you want it.
Yeah, that's right. Converted.
All right, so here we go. So this is a master that I did for Sleepaway Camp.
Yep.
I love those guys. They're great.
Yep.
The song's called Coloring Book, but I did something fun. Every 4 bars, I want you to tell me if you hear something different. Okay? So first 4 bars is original. The next 4 bars will be something different.
Something fun.
Okay?
Okay.
So check this out. Let me just get levels first, okay? Nope, not that way. Good?
Yeah.
Level-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Real things always messier than it seems. You only find new colors when you let them bleed.
love that
You wanna go
trumpet.
again?
First of all, the only thing I was able to hear is that shakers coming through more clear
Okay.
in the whenever the fun thing kicks in.
Okay.
That's my ears.
Gotcha.
I have a less tuned ear.
I'm hearing, except for the last 8 bars that you counted out, I was noticing there was a different configuration of harmonies coming in on each one, which would be a mixing and production thing. I noticed that I did feel kind of a reset of like almost like the high frequencies would like pop in a little bit, and this maybe is just like
That's
me.
what I was hearing though too.
Yeah, like almost like you were modulating how much of a high shelf there was or something, or like
Okay.
bringing it back in every 4 bars to like reinvigorate things. But I don't know.
You want me
I
to just
definitely
play the first?
Yeah,
I won't play the whole thing, but I can do it again from the top.
Yeah.
And we can do like
Sure.
2 seconds. Okay. One more time. I'm not saying anything yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Real things always messier than it seems. You only find new colors when you let them bleed.
I'm hearing a higher range clarity thing.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on it.
Okay. So and by the way, these are a certain frequency response as well, so you won't
Yeah.
be getting like the full breadth of the detail.
These are X40s,
So you're
but
saying
someone
high-
has an X50.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who.
I got the 50s.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying like a high frequency change between the 2 versions?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
in my
Okay.
ears.
That is the same track the entire time. There is no change at all.
You're the worst. That wasn't fun.
But there's a reason why I'm doing this.
I was going crazy. I was
Yeah,
like,
there's a reason why I'm doing this, and it's not to be mean.
There was a shaker thing. All right.
There were shakers, yes, but
Yeah, I
there,
got
there
you,
is
yeah.
no change between anything in there. I did this for a reason. This happened to me.
Yeah.
It happens to everybody where we're changing a bypass plugin and we think we're hearing
Oh,
the
yeah.
difference. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
I wanted to do this because I wanted to make a point about how we work with an invisible art form, and we can't see the brushstrokes, we can't see the colors, we can't even see how big the canvas is.
yeah.
It's all perception.
Yep.
And that is such a delicate line in this industry, and that's what mastering is.
Yeah. That's great.
And I wanted to say that before, but I couldn't because I had this in my back pocket. But
it
yeah,
was
that's-
all building to this.
That's great.
this happened to me so many times. One of the previous jobs that I worked at, me and my boss were like, dude, this is not sounding good. Like, we need to fix it, blah, blah, whatever. We did all this stuff. And then the track that we wanted was like in a hidden group that wasn't even being affected. Like
Yeah.
weird stuff like that would
Yeah.
happen. And it's so easy to convince yourself and others of what you should be hearing, what you want to hear, and all this stuff because, again, it's perception. But also, it's so easy to want to make changes to things.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to know when you want to stop and when to know to let it be.
Yep.
Because so many times I'll listen to something, I'll be like, this probably needs this, and I will do that. But then I hear something else in the track and I'm like, but we need to let that
Right.
be the way it is. So that was just a fun little thing. It happens. It's just a fun thing.
Wasn't fun at all.
I know. I was playing that for a long time. I was like, how can I bring some fun to the podcast?
That was
That's
good.
great.
That was
Yeah.
good.
But I'm telling you, this has happened to me so many times.
Well, it's totally a good point. Yeah, I've definitely messed with an EQ that was totally just off
Yeah.
numerous times.
That boils my blood so much. Like when you spend like 10 minutes on an EQ move and you're like, oh, this sounds so much better. And then you look in Logic for me, I look to the left and it's gray and I'm like, oh, that is time I'm never getting back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or
very
you're working on like I do it with vocals sometimes. I'll be working on a vocal, and then I realized that I had copied the plugin onto one of the background vocal tracks, and I was working on that track, and not even it was muted.
I've done that too.
I was listening to the main vocal, and I'm literally not even on that track, and I'm working on the same plugin.
Yeah, we've all done it.
Humbling moment every time.
Dude, every time. I
Every
still
time.
do it occasionally today. It's when you're moving fast though.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a byproduct of wanting to be good at what you do a lot of the time. You're just flying through. You think you're making the decisions that you want to make, and then it just hits you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to no more tricks. This is legitimate comparison from here
This
on
is
out.
the real deal.
Okay, this is the real deal.
This is the real deal.
Okay. Let me get this up. So I'll do the same thing. I'll do 4 bars. I level matched these as best as I could. We had to do it again, so there might be a little, like 0.1 difference between the levels, but I don't think it should be that bad. So I'm going to start with the original. We're going to go into the master. All right? I'm going to do a level check again. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. Okay, so this is original 4 bars will be
It's just the mix.
the master. Mixed into master.
Everybody's happy for me. It's probably a good idea with that family history. And I'm pissing in the wind when I tell them that I'm not even proud. It's how
I messed up a little bit there, but I think you heard the difference. We can do it one more time if you want. It's up to you.
I have some initial thoughts.
If you do, yeah.
Well, I noticed that the everything happening in the low end between one or like on the master, it gets louder, but it also gets the different low end elements become more distinct.
Yeah.
They're more distinguishable from one another, but also louder, which is like two opposite things happening almost at once, where it becomes louder, but it's not becoming more mushed together. It's becoming more defined and louder at the same time, which that was what stood out to me the most.
Also, I have to, before we continue, this is David Adams, an artist here. He's a friend of mine, an artist here in town. He let me use these tracks for his upcoming EP that's coming out relatively soon, I think. I don't think he has a date quite yet, but it's on its way.
His stuff always sounds so good.
Yeah, but I had to mention who this was before I forgot.
He's great.
But yeah, so you heard like the lower
that was
being more defined.
Yeah, that's what caught my attention the most.
Honestly, I didn't hear it, but I have a less tuned ear than both of you guys. But
the perspective is still useful because like the way that you're perceiving it could mean like you're hearing the broader spectrum of what's underneath.
Sure. But I've also realized for me where my ears are going is when I first started out with trying to figure out how to mix and produce, I was like, oh, that's what a sub-frequency is. Like that was my first like, whoa. Yeah. And then you came and then you showed me this is what 10K is. Yeah. Because before you, I was cutting 10K. Yeah. It's like you don't even hear that. So now I'm really listening most of the time to high-end stuff. And I'm slowly starting to figure out mid-rangey stuff. What's 3K? What's 2K? Yeah. No, sorry. What's 300? What's 200? That's where I'm slowly starting to differentiate different things. But yeah.
Yeah.
That's where my ears are currently.
I personally think that when you start to like identify frequency areas, the hardest one to differentiate becomes low mids. Yeah. Because like in my mind, mid-range frequencies have a different kind of, I'll call it harshness. But that's only, you know what I should say? A different sensitivity. Like you start to feel that like different mid-range frequencies have a different sensitivity from one another, and you kind of internalize that, and you know that's 1.5K, that's 3.5, 4. Low mids get tricky because at intense amounts that don't need, like usually when it muddies up, there's so many different kinds of what do you call it? I was going to say collusion, not collusion. It just like, I hate using the word muddy. But yeah, it basically just clouds up the image a little bit, but in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And bandwidth becomes really important in mastering when it comes to low mids. Because if you want to clean up that area, you got to be real careful, because all of a sudden you're sucking some of the kick out. Yeah, and you're sucking out a little bit of the body of the vocals if you're not depending on where it is.
Right.
Well, low mids is like, it's where all your mud is, and it's also where all of your like power is. Like anything that's not low end, that's the low end for those things. Like vocals, instruments, anything that's not low end, that's kind of where those things, the low end of mid-range instruments is actually in the low mids. So as you start to pull away, you can lose so much. Like it starts sounding thin. Things can sound thin really fast.
Someone was on TikTok was describing like the different frequencies of a kick drum, and they were saying 200 is where like, what did they say? It's like you hear this like, I can't describe it as well as he did, but like this thumping between your two ears. He described it really well, but how each frequency has its own little character to it.
Yeah.
Shit, what did he say?
I think familiarizing.
A car door slamming is what he said. Like the sound that you feel in your ear. I think you said that.
That range is almost like the low end that you hear and not feel.
Yeah, it's a thumpy.
It's
pressury.
That's more. Yeah, if you have a bass that is like really heavy in that frequency range, it's a lot of like,
right. Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah. Familiarizing yourself with frequencies takes a lot of time. I actually I still do it occasionally just to like keep up with my skills with hearing that, but there's an app that I use that you can identify frequencies off of sine waves that they play for you.
Yeah, I tried it and just failed miserably.
Yeah, that's extremely useful.
Yeah, I should be doing more of that. Honestly.
And I think like Sound Gym is another service that I've heard a lot about with like ear training stuff. Yeah, honestly, this sounds so freaking cheesy, but a lot of the times with frequencies, it feels like Friends for me, where it's like, not that 3K's been there at my lowest points. That's not what I'm saying here. I more so mean like, it's like a familiar face. Like so many times I've heard build up in all these areas where I'm like, hey, it's you again.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Or like, you need to come back. We need more of you.
Right.
It just makes sense. But it takes time.
It's a party, and not everybody is invited.
And some people drink a little too much and need to leave sooner.
Yeah. And some people need to stay the night.
Enter Pro Q3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of low mids, these were mixed by Ben Kling, a friend of mine in town. He is like the king of like ear candy. He's so good at adding little like effects and things that he makes to enhance the track.
Yeah.
That's what I love enhancing. But you'll hear a little bit of it on this track too, bringing that out.
Yeah.
But he is also the king of warm mixes. So a lot of the time, like, I'll get these like really lush productions, and we've been working for a while, so we've talked about it. But like, there's a balance between us that we've kind of reached where it's like, the warmth that he provides also can be enhanced by like upper mid-range stuff.
Sure.
And like, remember the mirror thing? So like, if I have to approach it very carefully with him about like what we're trying to do together on the master and with the artist, because obviously it comes down to if they're happy. But he's so good at making these like dense, beautiful productions. You'll hear it in this one. All right, so we'll start with mix. I'm going to try to be better about soloing them off too. So we're going to start with mix, 4 bars, and then master again. And I love this song, by the way. All right, here we go.
And I'm no good and there's a witch in the woods. And I'm no good cause I keep chasing candy. And I'm no good and there's a witch in the woods. And I'm no good cause I go where she leads me, if it please me. And I'm no good and there's a witch in the woods. And I'm no good cause I keep chasing candy. And you're crying out to keep my head from moving, to see what happens
before I say what I heard, that really distorted little guitar thing that faded in and then cut out was super cool.
It's cool percussion in that too.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Clinky.
you're kind of preserving his low end and low mids, maybe adding a touch of clarity to the low mids, but then I'm also hearing a boost at like 6 to 7K, somewhere in there. A little bit of that, like a detail boost, but not totally just like a high shelf.
Yeah, I thought I was hearing more detail in the cool percussion-y parts, and it felt like
The plucks.
we were going from this to this, right?
That image right there
Yeah.
is exactly how I view it too.
Yeah.
When I work on
Well,
stuff
I've
like this.
seen you work with my
Yeah.
mess
Yeah.
and bring it.
Yeah, so
level.
that's but for both songs, you're right about the low mids thing. So, like I said, his productions are really warm, and Ben's mixes are very warm, and I want to preserve that. But there is clarity to be had much lower as well. So, like the kicks in both of these songs were repositioned to a lower frequency, so that it doesn't mess with the low mids that he is keeping in those productions. And I'm basically just making sure that they just move further down so that it has that heft that they might have needed more of.
How do you shift it down?
You want to know something? It is the Shadow Hills that's on steel.
Really?
Yeah,
That does the
I think
trick.
it's steel. It's nickel, iron, steel. It's the lowest one, the one that does the 60 hertz boost. That's a lot of it.
That's
Really?
cool.
And then I also do this thing that I love doing. I don't see a lot of people doing it. I'm not afraid to do some crazy stuff. So what I'll do is a lot of the time, if kicks need to pop more, I'll do a dynamic EQ at the correct frequency, if that I feel like it should be repositioned to, or just in general where its like fundamental frequency is. And every time it hits, I'll boost it 0.5 dB or whatever it needs. So every time the kick hits, it gets boosted a little bit more than it is normally,
Right.
only if it needs more energy. So like in these, what I'm doing is I'm doing I'm doing processing that's affecting the low mids and the mid range. And then you have to remember the kick, because that's in this song specifically, this is a driving constant throughout the song.
Right.
It's so important, and I needed it to hit. So I'm doing a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you were right about that with the low mids and with the high end detail as well. That's probably the loop trotter, the saturate doing a little work, and also a little bit of the back EQ, doing some high shelf stuff there too. But what you did with your hands, that's how I think of it. It's like a lot of the times I kind of view it as like mixes point downwards when I get them.
Yep.
And most of the time what I end up doing is making them not capsize.
That's what. Yeah. You've shown me that with
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
a bunch of
So,
times.
and that's just from tonality, a lot of imaging, not processing, but like knowing what's being imaged properly and what needs to be imaged a little bit more properly.
Right.
And the loop trotter does something special though. It really does. Like it just kind of evens everything out in a really special way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have a kind of a specific question, but it's sort of piggybacking off what you were talking about with taking a mix like this and bringing it kind of more level. Something that I'm always contending with kind of at every stage, starting at my drum bus to my mix bus to my mastering situation, is being a little bit afraid of compressing low end. Because I use the Abbey Road mastering plugin. It's not the only plugin I have in my mastering chain. But
I always wanted to try that one.
It's a cool one. It's very, it's not super intricate. I mean, it can get a little bit intricate, but it is definitely more of an old school approach of like very wide sweeping general changes you can make. So it's like one tool that I use out of everything.
Yeah.
But it's a good starting point, and the compressor on it is awesome. But whenever there's a low cut that you can filter out, what the compressor's reacting to.
Yeah.
And I always bring out the low lows, because when it's reacting to it, I get this pumping. And also if I don't get a pumping feel from it, it might take my low end down to a level that it's no longer hitting like it was before. What's kind of your approach on compressing low end, compressing all the frequencies together, and just kind of bringing that mix up without losing your like the girth of the low end, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think. Let me think about this, because on the Shadow Hills, which I use, it has a side chain, so it doesn't. The low end, and I pretty much always have that on, unless for some very specific use cases. But yeah, I think generally I wouldn't want to compress the low end unless there was an insane amount of energy somewhere that needed to be contained, and I would approach that. And there's a few different ways that I could do that, but I think it's smart to sidechain or leave the low end out of that, because that is where you get the most pumping with compression for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just such a crazy
because the compressor is going to react to that before it reacts to anything else.
Yeah, and then you're eating up everything. It's doing more work before it's doing what you want it to do.
Yeah.
But that's also like my approach with low end in general is like that's why I do the broad strokes first. It's high end. Well, low end is really what I look for first. Yeah. If something has to be adjusted immediately, that's the first thing I adjust, because that can eat up so much of everything between headroom, tonality, whatever it is. That's like the first thing that has to be adjusted if it does. But then you also have to ask yourself, like, why are you compressing? And a lot of the time for me, it's in the tile method video, it's energy for me. So much of why I compress is honestly to give things more energy when they're needed, when it needs to come forward a little bit. And I personally don't think that would come from compressing the low end. That's like a like mid-range, high-end thing, even to the low mids up to a certain point. But yeah, I think you got to be careful with low end and compression for sure. Yeah, there's some crazy multi-band tricks you can do. With compression and mastering, like you can do. One of my friends told me about this. I'm going to forget it exactly, but he uses a multi-band compressor in a sense to every time the kick hits, it boosts a very specific frequency in the high end to enhance the attack of it on a master. Yeah, but he does it in such a way that's fascinating, and I've heard it before, and it makes things pop. But like, there's some weird things you can do with compression regarding low end. Not necessarily compressing it in itself, but using its energy as a tool for something else is a cool thing you can do. Yeah.
Jason Joshua uses Spiff.
Yeah, Spiff is sick.
It's a transient thing enhancer. Yeah. So there's a transient enhancer side and then a transient cutter side. And he always puts it on his kicks, not because it's bringing out the low end, but because it's bringing out that high end. The transients of the high end.
It's like enhancing the transient.
Pretty freaking cool.
That's another great example of like mirroring, where a lot of people think that energy from kicks comes from low end, but it doesn't. Right. That's the body, but the energy comes from the high end and the attack. Right. You have to think on the other end of the spectrum for that. Right. So that's a great example too.
Yeah, I love it. Did he have another song? Was that all of them?
No, that was all of them.
That was all of them?
Yeah, it was the trick.
Oh, that's so
and then the two.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just so mad the trick got me.
I felt.
Can you do it one more time?
I was having such a hard time because I was like,
that shaker was louder.
I was feeling bad that I wasn't noticing your cool trick that you did. I was like, I don't want to like.
You don't. I'll listen to it after.
Right? Look, I like to have fun, and at least it's memorable. Yeah. At least we all learned something today.
That's a clip, right?
God
there.
damn.
Yeah, that's a clip for sure. Yeah. I had to do it.
It was good.
You wanted to hear it again?
No, we can listen to it after.
Oh, okay.
I'm just embarrassed.
I think you're just embarrassed. Dude, if somebody did that to me, I would be like, the 8K is really poking out, I think, in the second verse. Is that the Shadow Hills? No, is that Unisum? Maybe you did the Unisum sidechain to get, like, I would go off the rails if somebody, dude, that would drive me, that would make me not sleep at night. What I did to you, that would keep me up at night. I'd never forget it.
What was I hearing?
No, dude, it's just perception.
No, it's great. Yeah. It's great to do something like that, and it's good.
I can't help myself sometimes.
It's a great lesson, honestly.
Dude, I'm a gamer. Everything's a game to me.
That's right.
Well, I feel like I learned a lot.
I did too.
Brad, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and schooling all of us in the wonderful world of mastering.
You got it.
Always something that I'm trying to learn more about, and
Always, yep.
yeah, and I'm sure many others are trying to figure
Yep.
it out as well. Well, do you have where can people find you if they're trying to get some stuff mastered?
Oh yeah, if you just want to reach out and talk, I'm on Instagram at Brad Tuller. Yeah, that's it. It's just at Brad Tuller, Tuller. My website is bradtuller.com.
It's a good website.
Yeah, it's like I worked a lot on my website. I just love how it looks now.
It looks
took me
great.
so
Go
long.
check his website out.
Yeah, it took me
appreciate
so
the
long,
hard work.
but those are pretty much the two areas that you can find me. So, but thank you guys so much for having me. This was a blast. I was
Yeah,
looking
it was
forward
so
to this
much
for
fun.
so when you were like, "Yo, do you want to come on the podcast?" I was like, "Why would you ask me that? Of course I'm gonna come. Like, what? That's like such a
Yeah.
cool thing to do."
Well, of course I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask.
It
Yeah,
was a
thank you
ton
so
of
much.
fun.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a good
I learned a
time.
lot from you guys too. It was great.
Cool. Well, that wraps up episode 9, not 8, 9.
It's 9.
9.
It's 9.
We're committing to 9.
If 9 was last time, this is 9.2,
That's
Yeah.
right.
and we can just keep going from there.
9.2. We'll keep
9B.
going from there.
Yeah.
or A.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening or watching. And we'll be back next week with another guest.
It's how I